Okay, so welcome everyone. And like I said, this is our first webinar for the year, and our topic is on earthquake early warning. And we have Laure from EMSC, and she's a researcher on crisis communication, seismology, and citizen science. She has many publications on this topic. She is a research officer and on the topic of risk society and social media. She works closely with the Earthquake Network Initiative, which is a voluntary smartphone-based earthquake early warning system. And today she will tell us a little bit about this initiative in Peru and some of the questions raised. So before we get there, so this first 5 minutes is just some intro and housekeeping. As usual, if you want to introduce yourself, you can use the chat and to familiarize yourself with the Zoom functions. So you can just say who you are, where you're from, so we just know who is in the room. So please feel free to put your introductions in the chat. Around 30 minutes, we'll hear from Laure, and then we'll open the floor for questions and discussion and wrap up. So just because Zoom is sometimes a little bit tricky, so just make sure that your video and your microphones are turned off so that we have enough bandwidth so that we could see Laure really well in her presentation. So use the chat box to introduce yourself, your name, title, or organization. And please feel free, as Laure's making her presentation, to put your questions, and I will make sure to raise those questions during the Q&A. So, and if you have a very, a question that you're urging to ask, you can just raise your hand, and we'll, facilitate and make sure that you have the floor to ask your question. So please avoid interrupting the speaker during the presentation. You can jot down your notes, and I guess, again, use your chat box. We will have enough time for Q&A. So we're all here learning about earthquake early warning. Each of us have different pace in our learning about earthquake early warning, and we're very, very happy that we will hear from Laure and learn about the initiative and the experiences in Peru. So welcome to this year's webinar series in 2023, and I'll hand over the floor to Laure.
Well, thank you very much, Marian, for this introduction and for the invitation. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation. Oh, where is it? Okay, so you should see it now. Is that good?
That's good. Okay.
Yes,
can see
perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so today I'm gonna take this opportunity to present you the research we led for the initiative Earthquake Network in Peru. So we led a survey with Francesco Pinazzi, who is running Earthquake Network, and Remy Bossu, who is also working at EMSC. And what we focused more on this survey was the question of the efficiency and the usefulness of such an earthquake early warning system. I just wanted to start this presentation by a short comic that I really like. So it's a comic by XKCD. I don't know if you can read well, but so it's basically the story of two people. One is discovering about a new earthquake early warning app in California, and that person is very excited about it. But the other one, on the contrary, is not that excited because supposedly we won't be able to recognize P waves anymore, and the early warning system will kind of play the role of an earthquake spoiler. Of course, that's just humoristic, etc. But what I find interesting here is it shows how when you just develop a system, you're never too sure how the people will actually receive it, perceive it, use it, etc. And that's why it is very important to study how the people react and use a new tool once you've developed it. And that's where social sciences are very important here. So when we start working with Earthquake Network, we had several questions. First, we wanted to see what was the perception of the system, but also how the people actually reacted to the earthquake early warning. Because so far, because earthquake early warning is developing so much, there are a lot of research, and at the beginning, a lot of research was focusing mostly on how people intend to respond to the warning, but there are still really few surveys on how people actually respond to the warnings. So there are some in Japan, for example, but we really need more to understand more about the reactions. So these are the two main questions that drove our survey. But while we were designing the questionnaire, we also had two more general questions. So one was about the efficiency and usefulness of such a system. So how do we measure if an earthquake early warning is efficient and useful? Usually, we do that from the scientist and disaster manager's point of view. So an earthquake early warning is efficient if people can take safety measures and then protect themselves, and then the risk that contributes to risk reduction. But then we questioned if that was the same criteria for the citizens, for example. So we will discuss that a little bit later. And our other question was, because as I said, earthquake early warning systems are developing so much. They all have different characteristics. And we wondered, yes, so we are studying earthquake network users' reaction, but would that be the same reaction if it was another system? And how the characteristic impacts the reactions of the people? So these are the main questions we're going to deal with. Again, this is just from a social science perspective. I'm not going to dig into the details of how the app works, etc. I can give you more resources if you want to do that. A second disclaimer also, so we deal here only with public earthquake early warning, so I'm not going to talk about critical infrastructure, etc. We only deal with citizens here. Also, the research dates back to 2019. I know we are already in 2023, so we also need to take that into account. And most of the results that I'm going to present here are from this paper that I put here. So you're very welcome to read it and look for more information in that paper. So as I said, we're going to focus here on earthquake network, and because we wonder how the characteristic of every system impacts the reaction to it, it is very important to note a few things about the system. So it is independent, voluntary, and community-based. So it may be a bit obscure now, but you will understand why right away. So Earthquake Network is based on an app that has now 10 million downloads. And basically, the app uses the accelerometers of the phones to detect the vibrations. And when there are a lot of vibration, it sends a warning to the people in the area so that they are warned of the shaking that is going to come. Sorry about that. So if you're not too close to the epicenter, you can receive this warning before you actually feel the shaking. So this is an early warning. You have here a screenshot of how the app looks like. It is available in 8 languages and it's free to download. So why do we say it's independent? Because it is run by Francesco Finezzi from the University of Bergamo in Italy. So it is not national. It is community-based because users, the system works with users' phones. So the more users, the more efficient the system. And I think one of the most important characteristic is you have to opt in for the system. So you need to download the app to get the alert. You won't get any alerts if you don't have the app. So that's a very important characteristic because you need to be volunteer to get the system. So if you want to, get more information about the technical part of it, I invite you to read that paper. You will get all the information. So now about the case study we have here. So after a magnitude 8.0 earthquake in Peru in May 2019, we decided to launch a survey. So just a few things about the earthquake. It was really largely felt across several countries. It happened at night. So a lot of people would be sleeping when the earthquake happened, and it made several damages, and 2 people were killed during the earthquake. So that's just for the picture of the earthquake. So we the app sent a warning. So you have here a picture of the warning. So you have an indication of that this is a warning. You have a countdown here. And you also have a map with the location of the earthquake. So we sent the questionnaire to all users of the app in the region where the earthquake was felt. And we collected a bit more than 2,000 answers, which was a good rate and a good number of people. So what do we find during this with this questionnaire? First, we asked the users, why they would use the app. And as you can see here, the main reason why people download the app is to get the earthquake early warning. So it is really, there is a strong desire for this service. And this is really the reason why people download the app. Another hint about this desire for earthquake early warning. So when we designed the questionnaire, we had interviews, and some of the people we interviewed told us that some people would just change their phones from an Apple phone to an Android one in order to get the app, because they wanted so much the earthquake early warning, so that they needed to change their phone because the app was not available on Apple at that time. Also, you have here the fact that nearly 30% of the people are interested in the community aspect of the app. But they really want to be part of a network of volunteers, so they really take into account the fact that it is community-based. Now, when we launched the questionnaire, we had no way to know for how many percent of the users the warning worked, because the system launched the warning, but there's no way to know if the people actually felt the earthquake or not. So we asked them. We asked the respondents, and so we classified them depending on whether they had felt the earthquake and whether they had received the warning. Given that, we can see here that the system worked perfectly well for 40% of the users. So either because they received the warning before feeling the earthquake, so that's 34%, or because they didn't receive the warning but either didn't feel the earthquake, so that's 6% of the users. The other, so we have late warnings. So if they have received the warning after having felt the earthquake. We also have missed warning if they felt the earthquake but didn't receive it, or perceived false warning if they didn't felt the earthquake but still received the warning. After that, we asked, so we are not now going to focus on the people who did experience perfectly well the earthquake early warning. So we asked them what did they think when they received the information, and well, that was pretty good news. Really, a large majority of them understood the warning. So it's more like 79% of them who understood that a warning, an earthquake was about to hit. And And the other positive news about that is when they received the warning, most of them felt alerted. And this is a rather positive feeling. I mean, they were alerted, but they were not too anxious. So this is really a state of a mind where you know something is going to happen, but you're not too panicked. So you're still possibly able to act upon that feeling. Also, maybe 2 points that were interesting. So those who didn't understand the notification, so we thought, well, we didn't understand, they felt more confused than others. So that kind of tell us that the more understandable the warning is, the better, of course. I mean, that kind of feel logical. And the other thing is that those who had received a warning before, they were more calm than the others. So that also advocates for drills, for example, so because it tells us that the experience is positive here, and that helps people to stay calm and to act on this warning. But as I said earlier, we often hope that when people will receive a warning, they will do something about it and they will take a safety action. Did they do that? Not at all. Really, you can see here, so the question is still for those who received the warning before feeling the earthquake. And so what do? They warned their relatives, either because they were in the same room as them, or even through social media or SMS. Of course, you can see here, they could do several actions, but as you can see, only a quarter of them took a safety action. So for example, dropped, covered, and all done. So when we see that it kind of feels like it didn't work, it was not useful from a disaster manager point of view, for example. Yet, when we asked, the users, 75% of them found it useful. Why did they find it useful? Because they had time to mentally prepare for the shaking, and that was very important to them. So this is where we see difference between what disaster managers may expect and citizens may expect. But that result is not totally new, and actually a study in Japan revealed the same thing. So a study by Nakayashi et al. So I really invite you to read that paper and compare the results. There are very interesting similarities in here. We also asked questions to those who received late or experienced late and false alerts. So those who received the alert but had felt the earthquake before that, they declared mixed feelings. So you can see that 34% of them were actually relieved because they understood that the alert was late. But there's an equal share, or nearly equal share, that were actually more anxious because they thought another earthquake was coming. So this is why we really need to work on the understanding of the system, so that the users are able to detect that it is actually a late alert and not another alert. Or so it can be either on the education or on the way the warnings are formulated. So that there's still much more work to do on that. And about the false warning, that was actually interesting to see that a lot of people, so false warning here, it is people received the earthquake, the alert, but didn't feel the earthquake. And these people, they were pretty confident that the system will work next time. And a lot of them also quoted answers to say that, well, probably they didn't feel the earthquake because they were too far. So that was logical. So this is something we didn't have in the questionnaire, and we are going to put for next questionnaire, is we didn't ask the people how intense they felt the earthquake, so that could have helped a little bit also detailing the results here. But what we found in general is that there is a general acceptance of the technical limitation of earthquake early warning system, and this seems even more true here because the people know that well, there's no government behind the system; it's all voluntary, so they are actually really thankful for being given the opportunity of having an earthquake early warning system, because there's none in place in Peru. So they know that at least they have that information, that it may not be 100% true every time, but at least that exists. And also we also found that users are more tolerant of unnecessary alerts than of missed alerts. And once again, this is results that were that you can find also in other research, which reference I've put here. So I invite you to have a look also. So just to sum up, what we found in the study is that there's a real need for a public earthquake early warning system, and I think the results really show that very well. There's also a very good understanding of the warning, as we saw, and when we were talking about characteristics of the system, here we could make the hypothesis that this is also linked to the fact that the users are expecting earthquake early warning. They know that it is part of the system because they opted in for the service. This is a reason why they downloaded the app, so they know they are going to be receiving warnings. I'm just making a small comment here. We see that this is not always the case. So, for example, we've came across some comments of Google service users who didn't expect early warnings. So when they receive a message, they don't necessarily know what to do. So I haven't come across any surveys yet. This is just comments. So this is really something we need to dig in more and to research more. We also found that, so as I said, that there's a tolerance for false and missed alerts. And more surprisingly, we found that there not so many, only a quarter of the users took protective behavior. So this is questioning the usefulness of not the usefulness, but the criteria to say that an earthquake early warning is useful or not, because actually the citizen found it useful as they had the opportunity to mentally prepare and to warn their relatives. On that, we could also see a very important characteristic of the service, because as I said, UQN is not, earthquake network is not universal. You have to opt in. So that means in a whole country or in a whole region, not everyone has access to the service. And that may explain why people really want to warn their relatives, because they know they're not going to be warned otherwise. And just to conclude the survey, we had a question about, to your opinion, who should be responsible for sending earthquake early warnings? And a vast majority of the respondents said the government. So that kind of respond also to the need for a universal system where everyone could get a chance to be warned. Okay, so what's up next? So we are we would like to have a debate within the community about what are the criteria to say if an earthquake early warning was useful, and how to measure if it's efficient, given the criteria of maybe the technicians, but also of the seismologists, of the disaster managers, but also of the people who actually get the alert. And what if that's already a good thing that they feel prepared, mentally prepared. We would like to study a bit more about the warning fatigue. So what does it make to you if you receive a lot of earthquake early warnings for small earthquakes, for example, and so maybe you took a protective action, but then nothing happens. So what does it mean for future warnings? That could also be if you have a lot of aftershocks. Do you want to be warned for every earthquake or not? We also would like to study the cultural differences. So this was a study in Peru, but we're not too sure how people would react to the warning of the same system in a different country or with a different culture. So this is what we'd like to study next. And finally, so you all know that a lot of systems are being developed, and they are not all provided on the same territory. So in some places or in some cases, you can have multiple earthquake early warning providers. And the question would be, how do people react to that? So that's an open question, and this is what we need to research after. Sadly, there was the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and so the earthquake network worked for this. The system, the early warning worked for this earthquake, at least for the first shock. So we have some people who received the warning. So you can see here. So we computed the warning time. So here, see if you are under 0 here, you received a warning. So some people actually got an earthquake early warning. And so we are going to launch a new questionnaire to understand what the people did. And what is interesting here, so that's good, maybe nearly the same questionnaire, just improved a little bit, thanks to our experience and the literature, etc. And the question is here, did the user also receive the Google, the Android warning, and what did they feel about that? What did they think, etc. So there's still so much to study about earthquake early warning, and so much to do to make it more efficient, either for the disaster managers or for the people. And I'm very looking forward to the discussion with you, because I'm sure that we've got a lot to bring to each other. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for such a great presentation, Laure. And I can invite everyone to just open up their videos, and we can, if you can stop sharing, and so we can see each other to have a bit more discussion. I think that's a really great presentation. I think also the value of the EQN is, like you said, it's voluntary, it's community-based, and yeah, pretty much most, I guess, places can have this. And as we can see even in Turkey, that people who might have downloaded it could have received warning beforehand. So one question from Carol, it's a question that's because like you said, this earthquake early warning system is not funded by a particular government. So how is this funded as a system independent of governments in this case? Yeah.
So to the best of what I know, it is funded. There is a pro version, so you can pay for additional services, but it's also funded by research projects, etc. So I don't know exactly like the state of the finance, but at least, yeah, that's what I know about the fundings.
Yeah, thanks, Laure. Carol, do you have a follow-up to that, or do you have any question that you want to ask Laure regarding that? Okay, cool. Thanks, Carol. Yeah, so we have a question from Raj. Just wondering, so you mentioned at the time for the Peru earthquake, it was still just Android phones. Is that right, Laure? Yeah, so currently, does the Android and iOS phones capture now ground motion data? And that would the service be available to both iOS and Android users?
Yeah, it is now available. I really found it interesting that the people were so craving for earthquake early warning that they would just change their phones. Of course, not everyone, because not everyone is able financially to do that, but the people who could, that's where that's how much willing to
Yeah,
get early warning they were. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And I thought that was, like for people to actually change the decision for their phones, just because they want to receive this service, just shows how people actually value the service that the EQN provides. So that's really interesting. Yeah, Raj, any follow-up to that question?
Yeah, so yeah, it's great to know that okay, alerts are now received by both parties, or Android and iOS. But for us, technically useful to know, probably you may not know, Lo, but if you are aware that whether even now whether both iOS and Android are used to capture the data. So now, for example, so there are two things, right? So capturing data is one thing, and receiving the alert is another thing. So at the moment, as you said, okay, both users are receiving the alert, but technically I'm keen to know, probably I'll go and read the paper, but whether both, if you know whether both Android and iOS are used to capture the ground motion data at the moment.
So I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to respond to that question, but I will ask Francesco and well, tell you for sure. Sorry, I'm really about the social science part and not too technical about it, even though it's always important to understand the technique.
Totally understand. Totally understand.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And I think it's quite interesting as well, because I guess with the services, like you said, there are multiple earthquake early warning services that are becoming available. And as you mentioned as well, like, Google Alert is also out there. So I guess just a follow up. So Julia said that, it looks like you raised really great future research questions. So you will be looking at cultural differences further, but at this moment now you've have a lot of work with different countries. Do you have any thoughts on the different might be, even if it's just anecdotally at this stage?
I don't know. When we started the questionnaire in Peru, I think we wanted to know also how much that the risk culture could impact how if you took protective actions or not. But we were really surprised that the rate of the people who actually took a safety action was the same, was very similar to what was the case in Japan, where everyone knows risk culture is super great, and everyone knows what to do, etc. So we were really surprised about that. But so for the moment, it's more okay. We're surprised, and we need more research about that. So yeah, that's still an ongoing question, I think.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to acknowledge that some people have just come in, but really welcome everybody. And if you're able to pop in your names and details in the chat box, it will be great to know who you are. So we're just on having a Q&A and discussion with Laure. So feel free to pop in any of your questions or things that you want to discuss. So we have a question from Jen. So really interesting presentations. Do you know of any studies or information on whether the tolerance for false and miss alerts will change with the maturity of the system or the experience of the recipients?
So far, I don't know of any study that shows that, which is because fortunately earthquakes are quite rare, and unfortunately these systems are still rather new. So there are very few places where the people might have received several alerts. But I'm sure this will come very soon. Especially, for example, I mean, we were talking about the Turkey example. Over there were sadly enough strong earthquake and significant earthquake to launch several alerts. So in a short time, you may have several warnings. So yeah.
And it was a question that raised in my head as well when you were discussing. So for example, for the Peru earthquake, so I'm thinking that you just look at the main shock and you didn't, was more alerts sent out for aftershocks for that one?
So for the second shock, there was no alerts sent, and I think it is because a lot of the networks were down. So it couldn't be technically, well, it wasn't technically possible, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting question raised by Jen. Jen, do you have any follow-up to that? Anything that you'd want to ask Laure? Yeah.
I guess it's just a comment. Yeah, I'm very interested, especially with systems that have been in place longer, like Japan, where they're sort of, as the novelty wears off, that it, you know, people are obviously enthusiastic to have information initially, but then so is there a difference in that tolerance between you know, understanding that it's a new system and has bugs versus there are scientific challenges that mean sometimes it will never work just because of seismology and the way the earth is, and that sort of education that comes with it. So that's where I was coming from, and thank you for your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, and I think that's a very interesting point as well. The question is also, I guess, at some point we're also all individuals, and we'd also have like different acceptance for information and for risk. So to what extent should we make it manageable, like to have parameters and everyone could fix their own, and that's, I mean, I guess we're only at the beginning of such questions, and so yeah, but definitely an interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I guess with one question with thanks for the discussion. One question that you raised as well in the future research, Laure, is that the warning fatigue. Just wondering, as well, as social scientists, researchers, will there also be like a survey fatigue? Is that something that we might need to address as well when we're, asking people to answer surveys? Is that
well, I guess it could be a thing. For the moment, it is not, because they are not, also because we trigger warnings only for significant earthquakes, and so that also depends, like, what is your range of warning. But then I was thinking also of that's a different topic, but a citizen seismology project in Haiti, where we give information about earthquakes and also an unfelt earthquake. And at first, the people were so interested, and then suddenly they just started to say, "Oh, okay, no, we don't want any more information," because that also add up too much stress. But I mean, that's a different topic, because here we speak about significant earthquake that may be that may cause damage or etc. So that's different, but that's also to illustrate the fact that you can start by being very excited about the information and the possibility to receive information, and then suddenly not be so interested. So we also need to study this interest, and that could also increase. Like, at first you don't understand, and then finally you say, "Oh, that's great."
Yes, and that's a really interesting thing. We had 2 earthquakes in 2021 where some alerts were sent out by Google Alert, and we sent out surveys for those 2 earthquakes. So it would be good to compare, the differences between, like you said, there might be some learning after receiving first alert and so on. Yeah, just relating to the topic of ethics, I think Julia also raised the questions like what when you will do the study in Turkey as the example that you showed us earlier, and potentially a very interesting study. How will you manage the ethics? Will you look more for the areas outside the destructive zone, or yeah?
That's a very good question. The thing is, I think only the people who were rather far received the warning. So we may also want to not study the heart of the map. We haven't decided that yet. And also the question of the timing of the survey is also very important for us, because we don't want to ask that too soon, but also if you wait for too long, people will just have to forget. Yeah. So yeah, that's still a debate. If you have any opinion on that, we will be keen on discussing that with you also. But yeah,
sure. Julia, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, I guess it's just a question that we also have in terms of our own research. So, you know, we have surveys like Mariam was saying, you know, trying to understand whether people receive Google alerts. But the question is, you know, what happens if you have a really big earthquake and there's, you know, a really big impact? And obviously you're not going to be talking to the people in the most destructive zone. They won't have received a warning anyway. But it's, you know, kind of like you say, the big questions are, you know, who do you talk to? You know, at what distance? When do you talk to them? So yeah, I think they're all kind of important things to kind of consider, and I don't necessarily have the answers to them, but I'm happy to, you know, if you need like a sounding board or something, we're happy to probably, you know, toss those things around with you if that's helpful.
Yeah, so. Sure, with pleasure.
Thanks. Yeah, really, you know, very interesting questions. And Lauren's asking, do you have any data or ideas whether people respond differently to alerts received for a daytime earthquake? Because I understand the Peru one was in the evening.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So that was the first and only survey for the moment for the QN dataset. So no, it also may depends on whether they are in a building or outside. I mean, there's but that comes also to protective action in general, not only to protective action after earthquake or warning, but I think that's the same area of research. And I know there is so much research about that. Like, so I mean, yeah, so many factors could influence whether you take actually a protective action or not. So I'm afraid I don't have much more than all these research.
Yeah, and there's definitely, like you said, still a lot of questions that we need to explore and try to answer. Then looking a little bit more onto the app itself. Jasper's asking, does the app provide additional information after the earthquake early warning? Like, is there an "Are you okay" feedback button, or like possible assembly points where people can go to?
So the app provides information, but that's only seismic information. So there's no I'm safe button or contact or anything, but there is seismic information, and what there's in the app is a forum. Is that what you would say in English? A chat, yeah, more like a chat, where people would and that's by language, so people could share information in the chat, or maybe ask for support, or yeah, share numbers, emergency numbers, any kind of information that may be useful after that.
Thank you. Jasper, is there any follow-up that you'd like to ask Laure regarding the app?
Yeah, just with that chat option, is there any regulation in that chat? Because I'm sure that it can be swamped with "I'm scared, I'm worried, my leg's stuck," or whatever.
So there are some moderators that are volunteers, etc. But also, I think it's also the chat is also the place to express yourself, because it is so important for the emotional response after an earthquake. Sometimes just to be able to say, yes, I felt it too. Yes, I'm sorry. I feel sorry. That's really part of the emotional response. So I think that's also important that there's a place for that. And we see, that's just a comparison with the Last Quake app that was developed by the EMSC. There are a lot of people who just comment about the earthquake to say, yes, I felt it. And I'm sorry for the people who felt it even more, and for the damages. And when you read it, it doesn't have always a lot of, it's not useful for everyone, but that's really useful for the people who leave that comment. So I think that's a very important thing.
In that chat feature, do you see kind of like earthquake misinformation, or it's just more reassurance that you hear from people?
So I'm not a specialist of that chat, but to the best of what I know, sometimes there are some misinformation. Earthquake misinformation are everywhere, so there would be no exception for the chat. But there are some moderators, so they could also be there to explain and to kind of prevent such messages. So I would say no more than anywhere else on the internet, social media. Yeah.
That's another topic that Laure is looking into, which is earthquake misinformation, which is also really quite important topic. Yeah. We have a question from Raj. It might be a bit technical at this stage, but if you can give some light to the question. So what's the logic to send out a warning or not? Is it by distance? Is it actual shaking intensity? Location of the end user who received the warning? What's kind of the standard, I guess, logic for EQN to send out the warning?
So again, to the best of my understanding, it is a combination of the distance and of the intensity. So, so in the case of the Peru earthquake, for example, really a lot of people understood that they were too far to receive the warning, so they were okay with the fact that they didn't receive the warning, so they were not bothered by that, which is a good indicator that they understand how an earthquake works and how the warning works also.
Thanks. So with what we saw with your results is that it really emphasizes, I guess, the importance of a bit of public education, so that people would know what the warnings mean and have managed expectations between how the alert is received. So what are the efforts for EQN for public education? Do you have like something that you send out to them when they sign up for the app? What's the efforts to improve the education aspect?
I would say not so much. I'm always a bit surprised. The app could be even like more clear, and there could be more explanation about what is an earthquake warning. At some point there are some information about that, but there are not so much explanation, and the people still understand it quite well.
Yeah.
So that's rather reassuring, I think. And that's even, I think if we were doing more, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But that's already great. So, that's good. But again, this is also because we have users who opt in for the service.
Yeah.
So they, at some point, they know that they're going to be able to receive earthquake warnings. So that's different than if you have a public service where you don't warn people.
Yeah, I was going to comment that I think the feature that it's a voluntary opt-in aspect, probably people would have did their kind of a bit of research or experience towards earthquake early warning, then they would have a bit of knowledge about it before they download and decide that they want it to be in their phones. And that will be quite different, like you said, if it's a public service or a service that's available to to everyone, where people don't have a choice and they may receive a warning that they may not be ready for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And just one comment about that. I think what we saw with the Turkey and Syria earthquake, is so there were a lot of misinformation, especially about earthquake prediction. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of papers, news in the press about the difference between earthquake prediction and earthquake early warnings. So I think that also participates to the people education about earthquake early warning. So yeah, I think that's also that's a positive thing about earthquake misinformation, is it gets people to know more about earthquake early warning as well, and to understand more about that for those who actually debunk the information.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, with the app feature, when you showed it to us earlier, you showed that there's a countdown feature. Is that a feature that the users wanted, or something that kind of just a service that you provide?
So unlike what you're doing in New Zealand, the feature was not designed in collaboration with the citizens, with the users. So that's just something that was designed like that, and I think it is a feature that the users rather like. However, we don't have a specific question in the questionnaire to know if the countdown was right. So I have no information on that, and that's something maybe we could ask next time. But I don't know, it feels like it's hard to see exactly if the 0 comes with the start of the beginning of the shaking. So I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's quite interesting, that it's an interesting feature, and for the app to be able to do that. And yeah, now the question is whether it's actually is it the same experience for the users, or did it arrive later than anticipated? Yeah, so we probably have a room for 1 or 2 more questions if anyone wants to ask, and raise their hand or say hi to Laure. You can put down your video. Anyone? Well, while people are thinking of their questions, so I guess one of the things here that we're doing in New Zealand, because the Google earthquake early warning alert is now available and has sent out a few alerts. We're working on understanding how people perceive it. So with Julia and Lauren and Raj, we're trying to analyze this survey that we sent out, and it would be quite interesting to see the comparison with your results from your studies as well, especially because this service is quite I guess different. It's not voluntary. It's something that people might not even know that's in their phones. Yeah, I don't know whether Lauren, Julia, or Raj, you will want to say something about our initial observations, just to give a bit of an idea of what's to expect. Lauren, Julia. Julia's pointing to Lauren in the video.
Thanks, Julia. I'm trying to recall the specifics. So the paper is currently under review, so we're hoping to have that out this year. Basically, just we found quite a few similarities. So really high perceived usefulness, even amongst people that didn't get the alert in time to do anything. A lot of people using it to mentally prepare, which is what Kiwis said they would use it for in the work that Julia led when it was still hypothetical. So some similarities. It'll be interesting to see if we can pick apart any differences, because our system is private and it's opt-out. So there are some really key differences between the system that we studied and the system that you studied. But yeah, we'll let this group know when that paper is available.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. And yeah, I think this also brings back to the question, like what Laure said, that we probably need to also have a discussion, a debate on what do we say is usefulness and efficiency for earthquake early warning, because people are saying that it is useful, but it's not what we as probably scientists would expect what is useful, such as whether it's protective action, or being able to do something with that alert. So I think this you raised a really great point there, Laure, on the what's next. We need to have this discussion on will it be useful, efficient? How do we define useful and efficient for especially for a public earthquake early warning? So yeah, so just really great points there, Laure. Are there anything else that you want to add before we officially close this session?
Sorry, I didn't hear if it was Laure or Laure.
No, sorry, Laure, that's you. Very close.
No, I would be super interesting. I mean, I will wait, but I will be reading this paper with great pleasure and interest. I think that's a very interesting topic, especially because then eventually there will be several systems in parallel working. And I don't know, I mean, maybe something we didn't talk about yet is what would have that changed in Turkey, for example, if it had worked really closely, like what could have been done different. I mean, that's always hard to make science fiction. I was going to say, like, say if it had worked, but yeah, I mean, that's an open question. I don't think anyone has really an answer to that, but it just put for thoughts and like what could have been done. I mean, earthquake early warning is not the key to everything, of course. So yeah. Sorry, that's a bit too sad.
Yeah, I think those are like really good questions. So like we do have to ask ourselves that is like, is it going to make a difference? Does it make a difference for some people and not others? Are we overselling it in some places? So yeah, we have to kind of think about those things. So those are really important questions.
Thank you. Thank you again for your presentation. The chat, a lot of people are saying thank you, and really great presentation, and for taking time to talk with us and discuss these things, and really very important points that you raised, and questions that we need to answer and really consider. And yeah, just like you said, it's a really still a very early stage in this area. Still lots to study, and just really great to see that there's as much interest at the other side of the world in these questions as there is here in New Zealand. And we hope that we help each other to answer just really important questions regarding earthquake early warning. So thank you for your time, and virtual hand a round of applause from everyone. And thanks for your time, and thanks everyone for attending. And we look forward to having the next webinar session in probably in the next quarter. And thanks again for taking time, Laure, for us today.
Thank you very much, Marian, and everyone for the discussion. That was super great. And congratulations on your work with the citizens. And I think the way you approach the question is really important and meaningful too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'll stop recording.